Today, we're making borscht, one of our family's favorite comfort foods. It has a wonderful sweet and sour balance. You get a whole meal out of it. You have the potatoes, you have the vegetables, and you have the optional beef. Today, we're cooking it with short ribs. For me, it's very important that you cook your beef broth and your vegetables separately, but that's just me. This is by no means an authentic recipe. It's how we like to have it in this family. First, we brown the meat. For me, with short ribs, you get a lot more mileage out of the bones when you roast them in the oven, which is what we're going to do today. We take off the bone and we keep them chunky for browning. And these goes into a tray, and if you have any leftover bones, throw them in. We have some beautiful Sakura ribeye, so that goes in as well. So this goes into a preheated oven, 180 fan, top shelf, hot pan, vegetable oil in. With something that has uneven shapes, I like to add a bit more oil than you think you need, because you can always skim them off afterwards. Short rib goes in. You want one layer. If you have more than one layer, do them in batches. You don't want to crowd the pan. You season. The reason why we brown them is to develop flavors. Protein's reaction to high heat is what makes meat taste meaty. So while that's browning, we prep our aromatic vegetables. First, we have some carrots. We throw them away after the broth is made, because it takes at least 2 to 3 hours for the meat to tenderize. By then, the vegetables would be mushy and they would be close to disintegrating. That's why we have to do this in 2 stages. You want the vegetables to impart all their flavors, and we'll add fresh vegetables at the end. If they're still sticking to the bottom, don't worry, give them time and they will slowly release themselves. Some celery sticks, again, we keep them chunky. Now, some garlic. We put the garlic separately because they burn much faster than the other aromatic vegetables. All right, everything's beautifully browned. We take the beef out. Perfect. And the aromatic vegetables, they go in. You want to give them a bit of color, again, to develop deeper flavors. A bit of salt to help them release the liquid. At this point, it's very similar to how I would have made most beef stews. What differentiates the borscht at the end, the beetroot and the acidity that you introduce. As you can see, the vegetables have released their moisture, deglazing the pan, mopping up those burnt bits, the fond, and through evaporation of the moisture, we're concentrating the sweetness of the vegetables. This is what's going to reinforce the sweet and sour balance of the borscht. Now that they have a bit of color and the pan is a bit cooler, garlic in. Now once the garlic is translucent, we add a bit of tomato puree. And the tomato puree, you really need to cook them out a bit, again, to evaporate the water content and concentrate the flavors. Very optional, but my personal favorite ingredient. This is salted anchovy puree you could buy from most Italian supermarket. No, it's not going to make it taste fishy. The umami from the anchovies would bring out the meatiness from the beef. Think about a beef udon or any soup dishes you've had at a Japanese restaurant. Chances are they cooked it in a dashi, which is made from shaved tuna. Don't worry too much about the fishiness. This would add a lot of depth, but again, it's optional. And definitely not in your grandma's recipe, that's for sure. In fact, don't show this video to your grandma. Short ribs go back in. And we're just gonna top it up with water. You can use chicken broth, but because there's already so many connective tissues within the short ribs, this will be thick enough, even without the chicken stock. We add some bay leaves. And we add another star ingredient, the roasted beef bones. Sakura beef goes in. Lid back on. And you want to let it simmer at medium-low heat for at least 3 hours. In the ideal world, overnight, because that would make the skimming of the fat and the dicing of the meat 10 times easier. So I'll probably see you tomorrow. All right, After simmering for 3 hours, I fished out the perfectly cooked beef, discarded all the vegetables, and left them in the fridge overnight. Optional, of course. But what happens when you leave it in the fridge is the fat floats to the top and they solidify, making the skimming much easier. So, you peel off the fat. Today we're gonna dice some carrots, some celery, some parsnips, and we'll sweat them a bit so that we concentrate a bit of the sweetness. So at high-end restaurants, they like to serve them julienne, but for me, I like to dice them and dice the meat. Carrots. This probably isn't in many traditional recipes. But again, when we set the objective of this dish, we're solving for that sweet and sour balance. And the parsnips, especially after sweating them, they add so much sweetness that if you have access to it, it's a wonderful addition. And they add texture as well, of course. Half an onion, of course. Half a big onion, I mean. Or one regular onion. Add some garlic. We're putting the garlic in a separate bowl because they burn much faster than the others. Medium high heat. We're sweating them, we're not trying to brown them. Olive oil. You can add back the beef fat. It's a personal preference. I like a cleaner taste. Vegetables in. Cooking it without color, just to evaporate the water content. We'll add a bit of salt to help the evaporation get started. Now, while that is sweating, we're gonna prep the other veg. We have some potatoes. That's what makes this such a comfort dish. You have everything. You have the starch, you have the fiber, you have the protein. I like to keep the skin on, but then that's a personal preference. I think traditionally they use regular cabbage, but I like Savoy cabbage just because they add a bit more sweetness and complexity when they're cooked. And of course, the star ingredient, the beetroot. Now, just peel them. The reason why we're sweating some vegetables but not others is because we want different things from them. For example, from the beetroot, we're not asking for sweetness, we're asking for color and the taste of beet. Some people roast them beforehand, for example, to speed up the cooking process. But I find when you roast them, you're evaporating the beet juice. You're taking away from the taste of beet. When your vegetables are translucent, you add the garlic with your purple hand. All right, now that everything is translucent, you can smell the garlic. We add the broth. And the non-sweaty vegetables. A tiny bit of water, just a tiny bit. Now, while we bring this back to a boil, we dice the perfectly cooked meat. And again, because of the overnight rest, this is primed for dicing. Now that this is boiling, lid on, medium heat, 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, stove off, check on our borscht. Oh, beautiful. That is beautiful. As you can see, because we didn't roast the beet, just 20 minutes, that was enough for them to impart their beautiful color. And because of the overnight rest, no visible fat on top at all. The texture of the vegetables are perfect. Now, since we opted earlier to maximize the flavor of the beet by not roasting them or not using fermented beet, we now need to compensate for the fermentation taste and the acidity by adding red wine vinegar to taste. Now, shall we plate one? And because we didn't boil the crap out of the vegetables, they retain their vibrancy in terms of their own colors. Now, just to recap what we did, we roasted the beef bones, we caramelized the meat to add complexity and meaty goodness to the dish. We discarded those vegetables and we cooked our diced vegetables separately in order to evaporate the water content, to concentrate the sweetness. We then added the beetroot, diced, without roasting them, without using fermented beetroot to maximize the taste of beetroot. We then counterbalance that by adding the red wine vinegar to introduce the fermented taste and the acidity. What you end up with is a sweet and sour soup that's complex, that is meaty. Traditionally, you serve it with sour cream. For me, it dilutes the flavor that we work so hard for. But if you haven't tried it before, definitely try both and decide for yourself. This is borscht, probably the most complete meal in a bowl. I hope you try it at least once. Now this is beautiful. This is really beautiful.